Happy holidays, Illini fans. What if I told you that this year I'm going to be asking for something I already got last season? Locked On Illini, let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. We're sitting here producing content for you every single day, regardless of the holidays. But happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever you do tend to celebrate. Just know I'm honored that you're spending a little time here with me. If you'd like to help me out, please make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Cost you guys absolutely nothing. I need no other gifts. If you can do that for me, I'd be absolutely appreciating it. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So speaking of gifts, today I kind of wanted to lead off with something that was announced on Monday, and that was that the NCAA board, according to Ross Dellinger, votes to appeal the Diego Pavia court ruling, but also grants a waiver for junior college players in a similar position as Pavia, paving the way for the extension of the careers of hundreds of former junior college players. So the original intention for today's episode was to go along with the whole Christmas theme. I was going to talk about a Christmas wish list and the type of positions that I think that the team needs and we need to focus on. I feel like we've gotten some solid players in the transfer portal, but if we're being honest, we see what teams like Wisconsin are doing. Minnesota is just doing fantastic when it comes to the transfer portal and are going to be a sleeper team in the Big Ten Conference next year. I think it's safe to say that we haven't had any game breakers necessarily join the Illini, this transfer portal. And we certainly do still have some weaknesses that we need to shore up. And this ruling kind of changes my mindset. Maybe it makes me a little bit too optimistic. Again, I want to hear your thoughts on this. But clearly, the number one thing on any Illini football fans' wish list is going to be that left tackle position, a position that J.C. Davis was a godsend last year. We got him as a transfer player, and he basically locked down that left tackle position and kept Luke Altmaier upright for the most part, and Luke healthy. And it's one of those where I thought we were going to be in the mindset of let's just enjoy J.C. Davis while we have him, and the next year he's going to be playing in the NFL because he'd be out of eligibility. Well, this ruling changes that a bit because J.C. Davis did attend 1 year of junior college, as did a fellow offensive lineman, Zy Chrysler. And, offensive line is just one of those positions that you can never have too many talent. Now, is J.C. ready to move on to the NFL and, maybe try to get that third or fourth round pick paycheck? Maybe. And maybe that decision has already been made. It just hasn't been announced. But what this does is opens up the potential of a return of a guy like JC. And let me tell you, okay, obviously Illinois doesn't have the NIL, and I think it's plenty obvious from the first couple of weeks of this transfer portal that some of the other teams do. But a lot of it is because while we do have NIL, we use it for retention of this football team. And, it's not a decision that I disagree with of Brett's, but Brett uses a lot of the allotment that he has to make sure that the star players on this Illinois team are happy and willing to come back. As of this recording, we haven't heard anything about Xavier Scott or Gabe Yakis, those type of guys. Like those type of guys, if they eventually decide to return because of the NIL deal that they sign, well, let me tell you, those two are bigger signings and better signings than anyone we could have gotten from a team elsewhere. And that goes double for J.C. Davis. J.C., I'm hoping, might see that, staying another season with Bart Miller and with Brett Bielema could ultimately move him up around or two even in the NFL draft next season. Not only would it shore up a gaping hole for Illinois, at this point, Illinois is probably on its third or fourth, if not even fifth option at left tackle, but I do see the upside for it for a guy like Davis. Again, Brett Bielema has a history of developing offensive linemen and getting them ready for the draft. JC came in pretty late in the transfer portal last year and, got to play one season under Brett and the staff. But who's to say after one more season, he can't shore up some of the weaknesses that the NFL might think that JC has today on his draft scouting report. So, and not just JC Davis. Again, Chrysler's another guy who's a little older, so he might not be interested in coming back. But if you have two guys like that, and even on the defensive side, I believe someone can fact check me on this. Caleb Patterson played a year of JUCO. Can you imagine if we can bring Caleb back for another season? I mean, you're talking about what I already think is going to be one of the best secondaries in the country next season. Bringing back a veteran. A guy who's on the core of this past year's team, this team that finished 9-3. This ruling, the Pavia ruling, whatever they're going to ultimately call it, could be huge for the Illini. Much bigger than any ruling that precedes it. Again, we're not really going to make a big splash when it comes to getting another 4 or 5 star talent from another school. I think we've been humbled a little bit this transfer portal. Brett always said that we're going to be a development school, and truly, I'm coming to the realization that we're always going to be a developmental school. And again, I don't mind, because if we're winning 9 games a year, I don't care how we got that talent on this football team, as long as we got that talent on this football team. And, maybe it is going to be from the prep side that ultimately we're going to be able to bring in some more game breakers to ultimately reach the next level that's going to be needed in the Big Ten Conference. But for now, all I want is consistency, right? For me, if I know I can just go to bed knowing that the Illini are going to be a bowl team every single year, that might sound silly to some of you, but I've been a fan for decades, and that has absolutely not been the case for a very, very long time. At some point, my expectation, my hope is going to be win 8 games every year and then maybe 10 games every year. But baby steps. And, Brett Bielema is the right guy for the job. But I'm one of those fans who recognizes how hard that job is, in particular here at Illinois. So that's what has me so incredibly excited for this opportunity with this new ruling. It's one of those where, we do have a history of taking prospects who have maybe played a year or two in junior college, and we're not necessarily interested in the 1 or 2 year payday or the glitz and glamour that comes with being recruited by some of the bigger programs out there. But they come in knowing that Brett is going to coach them up to reach the next level, the NFL level. And they grinded themselves at the lower levels, at the junior colleges. So for them, or at least you hope that Brett does a good enough job digging into their background that they work hard. And if the idea is if they come to Illinois and they work hard, well, Brett Bielema is going to get them ready for the next level. I'm telling you, this Pavia ruling, I know I've pronounced that last name like 2 or 3 different times this episode. I apologize. Whatever that ruling is ultimately going to be called could be a huge game breaker for the Illini, and really exactly the type of ruling that we need in order to show more continued positive momentum for our program. So let me know in the chat what you guys think. Is there another guy that I'm overlooking? Again, the ruling just passed as of this recording, so I haven't really dug too deep into our roster. I'm just kind of naming the guys that came off the top of my head, just because I'd already planned on recording a first segment talking about what my Christmas wish list was for this football team in regards to what we still need to get in the transfer portal. But let me know your guys' thoughts. And right after this, we're going to be bringing on Big Ten Ted, and we're going to be talking about some college football playoff. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown or how many points each team will score. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, so it's Tuesday, and of course, on Tuesdays, I bring on my friend, good old Ted from the Big Ten Ted Show. Ted, happy holidays, first off.
Yeah, happy holidays to you as well. We're close to one eve, and on the second eve that's coming up, we're going to have some college football playoff games as well. So, man, it is one we've gotten past the first round. We've still got 3 Big Ten teams in this thing, and 3 pretty darn good Big Ten teams, might I add. Certainly, and pretty good. Yeah, I know there was the margin of victory was certainly wide from this past weekend, but I think there's a lot of positives certainly to take away from now that we've seen the college football playoff played out, and I'm sure we'll get into that. I certainly maybe the games weren't the best, but I certainly like what the future certainly looks like in college football, and certainly the future what it looks like for the Big Ten and their possibility to take home a national title.
Yeah, it's one of those where I'm conflicted because I don't really like the 12-team playoff, and I don't think anything from this past weekend changed my mind behind the idea behind it, but I like football. And so it was nice watching more college football, even though the games themselves obviously weren't that good. But Ted, before we get to the games, you just watched the first segment of the show, talking about the Diego Pavia potential rule. I don't know how else to phrase it. I really think that a rule like this could really help, programs like Illinois out who have maybe an okay NIL, but for the most part, we use that NIL for retention, is to try to get guys like Gabe Jackas back, Xavier Scott back. And, if something like this passes and we can get the attention of a guy like JC Davis, to come back at left tackle next year, which again is our biggest gaping hole right now.
Yep.
I think this could be one of the most beneficial rulings by the NCAA beneficial for Illinois. And that usually doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, and this is certainly a ruling that I kind of agree with you could kind of benefit some of these mid-tier schools, because you mentioned the NIL game, of course, those schools that can recruit at a high level. Of course, in the Big Ten, we know the kind of money that Michigan's throwing around, Ohio State and Oregon are certainly throwing around to get a lot of those 5 stars at the top, with all due respect to your Illini, or maybe, hey, this team that I'm wearing on my shirt right now in the Wisconsin Badgers, maybe they can't throw around the most NIL money. So junior college it's always a level I thought was underutilized, both by players and by teams recruiting, certainly that level. You got to look at this from a player's perspective. All right, if you're coming out of high school and maybe you want to play at a Power 2 type of level, but you're not getting recruited heavily. You're like, say you're a Midwestern kid, you're getting recruited by NIU, you're maybe getting recruited from South Dakota State, and those types of handful of programs. Junior college now I think is going to be more attractive for kids because none of my eligibility kind of goes away. It's an opportunity for them to come in and not maybe start out at a lower level, which, in today's day and age, you can obviously transfer anytime you want, but it's a truly developmental level, I think, of football. And then you have teams like these Illinois, like these Wisconsins, like these Minnesotas that can really go to that level and find this type of player and bring them in here, and without, with having lots of eligibility left, so you can certainly build up that program as well. So this ruling is very interesting. I feel like, if anybody can go out there and you can sue the NCAA, go for it, right? Because right now they got so much on their plate, man. They got so much on their plate. Something as minuscule as like this, it's like, yeah, we'll appeal it, but this is very much on the back burner for us. We'll deal about this at a later date, and Diego might get his his next year of eligibility. So yeah, this is another one of these things in the new era of college football that's just, it's going to have a ripple effect. Like if Diego does get this year, you mentioned some guys at Illinois, you mentioned JC Davis on the offensive line, that could certainly come back, and that would be a huge returning factor for Illinois up front and offensive line. This could be an Illinois team that could be pretty good certainly next year. So I mean, it's becoming it's very interesting to certainly follow. There's a lot to certainly follow in today's day and age of this game. But, for these mid-tier programs where maybe they can't shell out for some of these big name transfers coming from other power programs or these high school recruits, this is kind of a good middle ground to be able to take kids, retain a lot of their eligibility, and then to be able to develop them into possible NFL draft prospects.
Yeah, it's like a win-win, right? Some kids just grow to be 6'1" and 230 pounds, which is a decent size, but maybe not quite the size a P4 school is going to look into.
Right.
But they're a junior or senior in high school who had their growth spurt and they've never played football before. And going the JUCO route, as you said, could be a way for them to develop and learn the game of football a little bit, and then be given more of an opportunity to eventually play and get recruited by like a P4 team. And then who knows, make a little NIL money on the side. Of course I come with a little bit of bias just because of how much it could benefit the program that I support. But, we'll see. It's one of those, I think the ruling was, at least for this season, everyone is going to be eligible. And again, JC Davis would be great. I don't know if he's even interested in coming back for another year. I think it could benefit him playing a second year under Brett, but he's already going to be projected for about a 4th round grade in the NFL draft, so he might be ready to move on to the next level. But Ted, we bring you here, of course, every week to talk the Big Ten Conference in general. And this past weekend, the college football playoff started.
Yep.
Again, the games may not have been that entertaining, score wise, but there's still a lot of talk. But let's talk about the games real quick.
Yeah, first thing I thought of when Indiana gets down by all those 3 scores, I'm like, I bet Sunny's smiling from ear to ear right now, man. I bet he's as happy. Then he goes out and tweets, hey, this is the Indiana that we all kind of thought about. But I joke and I kid, of course. But the first game on that first day, when I look at Indiana, they had some opportunities early on in that game, of course, when they got the James Carpenter tipped the ball. D'Angelo Pons comes down with the interception. It kind of like, okay, it kind of turned my head a little bit. Great opportunity on the road, because that's what, in that type of environment like Notre Dame Stadium, they needed to kind of try to quiet this crowd down early. And then, man, that interception on a forced ball by Curtis Rourke, next play, 98 yards to the barn for Jeremiah Love. The game wasn't over per se at that point, but I'm like, that is not a good feeling. I did not have a good feeling, certainly at that point in time. The punting was really off, and that's one thing we saw. I think that in the Penn State SMU game, which we'll talk about, kicking is not easy in cold weather. Right. There's many things that's not easy in cold weather, and punting and kicking is not one of them. Right. You saw, I think it was Penn State. You saw teams. Yeah. When they went for it, when 4th, and I forgot the distance, in their own territory at their own 20-yard line. If that doesn't say anything about kicking, I don't know what does. But yeah, this my final thoughts on Indiana, I think is what we saw Indiana play. They clearly couldn't hold up against the trenches. They couldn't slow down the run. This was, I thought this one would certainly be a lot closer, but this was certainly a path that was certainly on the table for IU. Indiana was a team, when they faced off against really good teams, when they faced off against Ohio State, when they faced off against Notre Dame, it was abundantly clear that they certainly did not have the talent to match up with those types of teams. They didn't have the trenches to be able to match up with those types of teams, which we know is so important. But then you saw them match up against the 6-6 teams and the 7-5 teams, and they just boat raced them off the field, right? They were able to do what Alabama wasn't able to do. They were able to do what Ole Miss wasn't able to do. They beat these 6-6 teams. They beat all of these 7-5 football teams. The thing about the Big Ten this year is there wasn't a huge bridge from your playoff teams to your 500 teams. Mm-hmm. And I know we talked about this a month, 2 months ago. I can't exactly remember. I would have loved to see Indiana play Illinois this year. right? Illinois was a team that finished 9-3. Them and Iowa were a very slim bridge going from those playoff teams. I know Michigan was in there at 7-5, but this was a 6-5 team going into that Ohio State game. But, the kind of that next tier, it was very, very slim. And I would just have been curious to see if they would have faced off against a team like Illinois this season. That is a very balanced football team that could certainly maybe do some things to them defensively as well. So in Iowa, Indiana did not play Iowa. That would have been a very interesting matchup with Iowa's defense against Indiana's offense as well. Even a team like USC did not play them. We know the Trojans played a lot of teams close this season. Indiana just did not play a lot of those teams kind of outside of the playoff, but they're not 6-6. They didn't play those teams a lot in the middle. I'm just very curious to see, and Illinois and Iowa are both on the Hoosier schedule next season. It certainly increases in difficulty, but I'm just very curious to see what would have happened. And you look at that for Illinois. I mean, what if Illinois would have been on the schedule late in the year and they would have been able to get a win over Indiana? Illinois is a team that a lot of people are overlooking there at 9-3. I mean, I know we're playing with a lot of what if scenarios here, but that's the thing. When conferences get bigger, you have this disparity in scheduling. It's just something that's going to happen. A lot of people blame Indiana. I don't think you can necessarily, you have to blame things bigger than Indiana. It's super conferences, it's scheduling. This is what's going to happen. There might be a team next year that runs through a similar schedule like Indiana and might get a lot of disrespect. I think a lot of disrespect for IU comes from them not having a big brand on the side of their helmet. Personally, like I said it earlier in the week, if they had Michigan logos and they were going 11-1, I said, even if they had Nebraska logos and they were going 11-1, I think people would have fell in love with this team. But I think Indiana was kind of this rebel within college football this year, and they were kind of a lightning rod for all of this other negativity afterwards, certainly. But great season for the Hoosiers. Curt Cignetti has certainly turned things around. He's trying to reload in the transfer portal. There's certainly a lot to be excited about in Bloomington, Indiana, to build off this kind of year.
Yeah, I mean, you joke about my Indiana hating or whatnot, but like for me, it's like my frustration is similar to what you just kind of mentioned, right? Like I simply just wish we got a chance to play them. Right. Indiana was very good at, I think you used the word boat racing. Like, once they had a game in hand, they didn't let up. And that's just the type of head coach that Curt is. But it also works on the opposite end, right? Like, Brett is the type of guy, if he knows he's down 2 scores, 3 scores, he'll get more aggressive and go for it on 4th down, et cetera, et cetera. Against Ohio State, Curt Cignetti, in my opinion, and I actually said this in a couple of group chats, was like, he plays conservative because he doesn't want the final score to look too bad because he has the perception of what it looks like. And to me, the whole world got to see it in that matchup against Notre Dame with him punting. He used a really stupid excuse, in my opinion, talking about how the offense didn't show much and he had more trust in the defense or something along those lines. So for me, it was simply one of those where Indiana probably would have been favored and I probably would have been wrong. Maybe you're not. But I as you said, I wish we had a chance to go up against them because as great of a story as they were, I'm kind of jealous in the sense that this 9-3 Illinois team, who was projected to win 5.5 games, almost got completely overlooked this year.
They did. And I kind of wish, like I said, I wish they would have gotten the opportunity to play, because you kind of look at Illinois' schedule this year. Of course, that loss to Oregon is on the schedule. And who is the other big team that they lost to? Penn State. Yeah. Here's the thing about that Penn State game. Nobody's going to talk about this except maybe you. Nobody's going to talk. This was a 14-7 game somewhere in the fourth quarter
with 3 minutes left.
Was it that late? Okay.
Yeah, I remember 3 minutes left in the game.
And I think did they have a 4th down, maybe near midfield? And I think they failed to get it and Penn State got it. And I think they put,
that escapes my memory right now, but it was a very close game at the end of the 4th quarter. And then, Penn State was able to score a touchdown because again, we had to force ourselves to try to get that score. And you're talking about arguably, potentially, 2 of the top 4 teams in the country.
Yeah, I thought Illinois played Penn State very tough. Oregon's Oregon this year. That's going to happen on the road when you go out west. But I thought Illinois played really good football this season. I hope that's going to be a very interesting bowl game, right? Because you've got Altmaier in there. You've got, of course, Lenora Sellers at quarterback for South Carolina is going to be in the world of opt-outs. You got two of the quarterbacks, these mainstays for the Gamecocks and the Illini are going to be on the field. So, like, if they can get that win against a South Carolina that was kind of complaining that they weren't in the playoff conversation, that says a lot about Brett Bielema to get a 10-3 season this year. I certainly hope that they get a lot of respect going in to next season.
All right, Ted, we'll just wrap it up here. We'll preview the actual next week's games on next week's episode. I know you got to go, but let's let the audience know what's going on in your channel.
Yeah. So this week, we're taking a little bit of off time for the holiday, but then we're kind of going to really ramp things up after Christmas with previews. Looking forward to the Rose Bowl, of course, Oregon and Ohio State getting that very convincing win over Tennessee, of course, in the first round of the college football playoff. It's those two teams seem like the best two teams in college football. Most talented teams facing each other in the quarterfinals seems a little weird, but I would have no rather place to see a team like Ohio State and Oregon, I don't care what round it's in, at the Rose Bowl, the mountains, the sunset. Chills just thinking about it. Chills just thinking about it right now. So it really doesn't matter to me. This is my national championship, so to speak. I think whoever wins that game is going to really have a lot of confidence and momentum going forward on this thing. So we're going to have a preview of that from multiple angles. So that's going to be a lot of fun, certainly coming up. And then Penn State and Boise State. Going to preview that one, of course, the Nittany Lions getting it done in convincing fashion, 38-10 over SMU this weekend. So we've got a lot of previews leading up to New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, so complete coverage leading up to the quarterfinals. And I suppose I should probably talk about the transfer portal a little bit. There's been a lot going on, certainly as of late. So we got a lot of stuff certainly to get caught up on.
Yeah, I know we ran out of time today, but what I did want to mention was, like, the one thing that bums me out about Oregon and Ohio State playing in the next round is I would have loved the opportunity for Oregon and Ohio State to play some of those SEC teams, the more dominant ones, and have that matchup and really kind of quiet the narrative, because I, like you, I think you've said this before on this very show, and I completely agree with you. I think Oregon and Ohio State are the two best teams in the country. And, I think I mentioned it on last week's episode. A couple weeks back, I took a future bet on Ohio State to win at plus 850. I just think they have a Michigan problem, and I don't know if they have a problem with the rest of the country. And so I'm kind of banking on that. But that's the only reason I kind of wish the game was not necessarily in the next round.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens, and this is something we're going to figure out as a college football playoff country, so to speak. We know that this format was built for Texas and OU when they were in the Big 12. It was built for when the Pac-12 was still the Pac-12, right? When we had 5 power conferences. Now that we've got kind of course, a power 2 and everything's consolidating at the top, and then you have something else. I think we're going to figure things out. I've been hearing rumors maybe as early as next season with the current 12-team format. Maybe you could just have the 4 highest-ranked teams, get all of them, certainly get the buys, and certainly by 2026, I think we're going to have some sort of new format of some kind, maybe expanding to 14 or whatever it is. A certain guaranteed number of spots has been floated out there for 2026 as well. But, sit back, enjoy it. It's the Rose Bowl. It's classic. It's classic Big Ten versus Pac-10, right? It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. And I'm trying to, for those pro wrestling fans out there, there's a saying that goes, suspend your disbelief, of course, for obvious reasons when it comes to that. I'm going to get immersed in the Rose Bowl. I'm going to get immersed in the setting, and I'm going to suspend my disbelief that this is a quarterfinal for 2.5 or 3 hours. Like I said, this is a national championship type of atmosphere. It's a national championship type of setting, certainly on New Year's Day. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm sure, the Rose Bowl committee, they were they were the last ones to really agree to this format. And of course, they've always wanted to keep tradition. It doesn't get more traditional than this with these two schools going at it. Last time we had this matchup, it was the best game of the year. Ohio State arguably an offensive pass interference away from winning that game, being in position to kick a field goal. And now that Ohio State has all of this confidence and all of this momentum following that great game against Tennessee, I watched that game against Ohio State, and I'm like, that looks like old school Ohio State when Fields was slinging it around and CJ Stroud, and they're going over the top and creating explosive plays. Like, Jackson Smith and Jigba and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. did. And I'm like, this is what it's supposed to be. I mean, where was this against Michigan? That's what everybody was asking in that game against the Volunteers. But the good news for Ohio State is they got it now. We're going to preview this one. I kind of want to maybe save that for next week.
Yeah.
But, man, it is going to be so much fun. So much fun to see this one. I could see this one going a lot of different ways, certainly in Pasadena.
Another call back to professional wrestling. Best in the world. Big Ten, Ted. Appreciate having you on, and enjoy your holidays.
All right. Sounds good. We'll see you in the next one.
Speaking of bowl games, there's still a lot of tickets remaining from what I heard from Illinois and South Carolina. So if you're interested in going yourself, make sure you use the Gametime app. Gametime is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Gametime has all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. And seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And of course, the lowest price guaranteed on Gametime, or they will credit you for 110% of the difference. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And that's going to wrap it up for this Christmas Eve edition of Locked On Illini. Again, before I let you guys go, I just wanted to wish you all a very wholesome holiday, whatever it is you celebrate. I just hope you guys all get to celebrate it with the ones you love and the ones you want to be around. I will be here on Christmas Day. I do have an episode lined up where I'm going to be discussing the naughty and nice list when it comes to Illini athletics. So if you have time, I hope you do join me for a few minutes on Christmas Day. I will have that episode ready for you early in the morning. Again, on your way out, if you'd like to support the program, all I ask for is a simple like and make sure you're subscribed. The percentage went up to like 68% of the people who watch these videos are not subscribed. And I know you don't think it affects much, but trust me, on my end, it really does help with the whole YouTube algorithm. But one more time, just want to say, happy holidays to all those who are celebrating anything. And even if you're not celebrating anything, just as the year gets closer to its end, life isn't always so easy, and we made it through another one. So until next time, ILL, love you guys.